How's it going, everyone? Hope you're having a good day. So this video is going to be a little bit different than my typical format. We're going to start off with a mountain route run that we did about a month and a half ago. It was an awesome trail with lots of challenging obstacles. Some of the clips here are just us kind of driving around, having a good time. And unfortunately, during this trip, what had happened is that the extension bracket on my end link, my front sway bar end link for my 2-inch lift, snapped. It's a very, very common failure point with the 2-inch lift on the global platform. And so what I don't have on camera is what it sounded and felt like, but luckily this happened on the way back. And luckily we had people with the group who had some tools to take everything off and drive home without the end link attached. But this is just us kind of driving through. This is some of the ruts, and then this is kind of one of the more difficult climbs, as you can see based on my son's filming here. But what was really noticeable in this ride is that on the newer models, the 2-inch lift kit extension brackets actually only move the sway bar about 1.5 to 1.25 inches lower. And so what that means is there's actually additional tension on your sway bar and your sway bar end link than you would have had on stock height once you lift the vehicle. And so what that results in is a stiffer front end, which may be good for on-road handling, but is not great for off-road handling. So I'm going to show you kind of what broke. And then about a month later, I went back out on the trail with some friends and kind of did a comparison. So I replaced the bracket and the sway bar end link and the other parts. I'll go ahead and show you guys that now.
So the end link was broken, bent, and jammed down here. Look at the inside of the wheel. So it took off all the wheel weights. I'm gonna have the wheel rebalanced for sure. But there's all the lube from inside the end link joint, the ball joint, dripped onto there. It also broke my freaking tie rod joint too. See that? Man. So that's where the sway bar used to be. Our sway bar end link, and look at the bracket. Snapped completely. Here's my ABS line. Man.
Here's what that broken bracket looks like. And then here's what my gauge cluster looked like when all that happened. Now, the reason for that is because eyesight and so many of the traction stability control systems rely on your ABS sensor. As soon as that got knocked out, eyesight went out, hill descent control went out, cruise control went out. The steering got extremely stiff. I thought there was something wrong with the power steering. My ABS light was on. I mean, everything was on, and the steering was super, super, super stiff. So if that happens, just know that the ABS sensor is going to really affect the vehicle handling. Luckily, after I replaced the ABS sensor and I went through a drive cycle and reset the computer, it was back to normal and steering felt good again. But I mentioned that because the steering was severely affected the whole way back off the trail, which is really difficult on a dirt road going 5 miles per hour, steering with basically no power steering, but lessons learned. So cool, we've got everything fixed. Cost me about $200 in parts plus the alignment, so it wasn't too bad. I did all the work myself. But now we're going to show you a little comparison. I've got the sway bar reconnected. I've got my friend Jimmy, my friend Rich with me, and we're going to kind of compare how their vehicles handle versus mine on a similar obstacle. Now, granted, drive style, approach, momentum, obviously all affect things. First up is Jimmy. I'll list his modifications up here for you. And it's pretty smooth sailing. He doesn't really lose momentum, and it's fairly gradual. So he's got a nice climb going. And as you'll notice, he's got the 2.0 Crosstrek. So about 30 less horsepower than the Forester has, but he has both front and rear sway bars disconnected. Much better articulation. He's also got a long travel suspension with the Ironman ATS system, so that gives him a little bit more travel, plus he's got less restriction when it comes to articulation. This is Rich. He's in the 2006 Forester. He has a whole bunch of
Go
momentum and then
left,
slows
low.
down because there's kind of a little rock valley right here that you'll see in a moment on my attempt. And
There
through
you go, a
some
little
wheel
more
spin
driver.
and adjustments to his line, he's able to work his way up there with a little bit of spotting help.
Yeah, you'll take it on driver's side just a little bit when you're going up.
All right, so here he goes.
Driver, up. There you go, you got it.
And he does have his sway bars connected, front and rear.
Golden.
And luckily he's got a skid plate because I think it took a couple of hits on this particular trip. All right, so next up, I'm going to take a go. Granted, I should have had more momentum, but as you can see, my wheel slips here already, and then it'll continue to slip. Now, you'll notice, you'll see the passenger front wheel not gripping very well. And obviously what will happen is, even with X mode engaged, eventually the engine will just cut power. And what you can't see is the driver rear tire is also spinning. And so, you know,
You're good.
the moral of the story here is,
You were like
without the articulation, it doesn't
90%
matter if you
there.
have, good tires as well, and even more horsepower. Line choice and articulation really make a huge difference. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something.